Although Dave bought and sold guitars out of his home in the early years, it wasn't until 1982 that Dave Rogers rented a 400 square foot space and a vacant dental office in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and Dave's Guitar Shop was born. That's my guest today. We've got Dave from Dave's Guitar joining us, and we're going to talk about the history and kind of everything from how you got started to current challenges and things that you're working on today. So, Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Really excited to have you. I shared you when you jumped on that I'd been to one of your satellite locations in Wisconsin a few years back, and ever since had that on my list of I need to talk to Dave and talk about how his business runs and how it's been affected by all the changes in the world, essentially, since in the last 42 years since you started Dave's Guitar. And so I'm really glad that we could kind of make this day happen. So why don't you give us the rundown on how it all began? From, I guess you started as a collector and got into retail. So kind of tell us the story of those early days.
Well, as a young man, like maybe high school age, even, my older brother played guitar. And so, I mean, that would even be grade school for me. And I always looked up to my older brother, and he was a great guitar player, played in a popular local band. I admired him and wanted to play guitar also. So guitar was always around the house, always had a great album collection. And this was late 60s. So, it was all about guitar, rock, and the Guitar Hero, whatever. So that kind of gave me an early influence. So, we came from a, I don't know if you'd say a poor family, but lower middle class or whatever. So anything that we wanted, we had to get on our own or whatever. So, I saved up and bought a guitar from Woolworths for $10, and it didn't have a bridge on it. My brother helped me get a bridge on it, and it got me playing a little bit or whatever. But I was always into not just having one guitar, I guess. I would shop, the newspapers, the pawn shops, everything around our area. And, even as a young man, if I found something that I thought was a good deal, but maybe not necessarily anything I wanted to play, I'd buy it and either flip it or trade it into another store to get something that I wanted, knowing that I got a good deal on it, I'd make some money on it or whatever. So I was wheeling and dealing as probably as young as 14 years old or whatever on that. But I always wanted to be a guitar player in a band, and we tried that. Made absolutely no money. Some great stories about that, but so that never worked. So I thought, well, the next best thing would be working in a music store or whatever and still play on the side. So I went to work for a local music store here called Dahlberg's Music. God, that would have been probably late 70s, I'd guess. Worked there for a few years, and the couple that had it were in their 70s, decided to retire. They sold off the inventory and closed up. And I went around and applied at the other music stores in town. There's 2 other stores in town, and neither of them were interested in hiring a guy that just knew guitars. They wanted to, do pianos, band instruments, whatever. And I had no clue about any of that stuff. So I lived in a little trailer home. And so I thought, well, I'll just do guitar repairs in my little trailer. And I had a shed outside that I set up a spray booth out there and refinished guitars and hung them on my kitchen cupboards to cure. And did that for a while. And I actually did a little bit of business out of there. And one of the guys that played in the band with me, he's like going, Dave, you got to start up your own shop, And so sure enough, I found a little 20 by 20 spot that I could rent out for, I don't remember what rent was then, $400 a month, something like that. And so I had 15 guitars and opened up my doors, and I applied to a bank locally here for a loan for $600 to put up a sign, and they turned me down flat. They're like going, sorry, kid, So, and I was 25 then, and I had no credit, rating whatsoever, never took out a loan or anything like that. Didn't have a clue. So I got turned down on that. But luckily, the next day, Cheap Trick was playing in town, and I went and saw them, and he bought a Les Paul Jr. from me, and that paid for my sign. So,
oh, wow.
So that was my first retail sale was to Rick Nielsen. So,
oh my gosh.
He always jokingly refers that he got me started in the business. So
he did, or he at least kept you going in those early days.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So I did that and was in that location for, probably 2-3 years. I made enough money in playing in the band on weekends to make my trailer payment. So every time if I sold a guitar for $1,000, I bought another guitar that I could sell for 1,500. You know, just kept reinvesting and
Mm-hmm.
building up inventory, and just kept plugging away like that for a few years. Then, God, what would it be? Probably 88. I think I went to my first guitar show down in Dallas, and that made international connections, and that made business boom for me quite a bit. You know, we shipped a lot of guitars overseas at that time, and then
Mm-hmm.
and then the internet hit late '90s, I guess, mid '90s.
So, a couple of questions. So, how
Sure.
long did it take until you were turning enough inventory that it was able to provide for you personally? Like, why? Because in the beginning, it was
Oh, I'm
probably
still
pretty
waiting on
lean,
that.
right?
It's been 42 years now. It'll come. It'll come.
I believe in it. I believe it.
Yeah,
It'll
well,
happen someday.
about the first 5 years, I didn't take a paycheck. No.
Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha. And then you mentioned going to the Dallas Guitar Show and that kind of adding those international buyers. I read on your site, which your site is great, and you've got a really great about section that's kind of got the history of how you got started, which is really interesting to read. But you've been around long enough to reminisce about the days of postage stamps and putting together,
oh my
inventory
God, and
sheets.
Polaroid photos to send to people.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. Tell me about what those days were like, pre-internet days of slinging guitars all over the world. What was that like?
well, it's funny because some of the guys that work here, I mean, have worked here for 30 plus years or whatever, and they remember the days that I'd buy them sodas so to keep their lips moist so they could lick envelopes. I don't remember what they call it. They call it stamp pops or whatever because they're licking stamps. And I'd buy them as many sodas as they needed to keep their mouths moist so we could put all the envelopes together. Well, we're mailing out every month. We did our serious mailing to, like, I don't remember how we decided which was which, but there'd be like probably 300 or 400 mailers that we'll mail out. But once a quarter, we'd do a mass mailing, and those were probably 3,000 or 4,000 envelopes that we'd send out of our inventory. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, that was the good old days. I mean, I remember when I was still, before I had a shop, when I was still working at the other shop, they got Gruhn's list in the mail, the little printed flyer. I don't know if you ever saw that from way
Uh-huh.
back when,
Yeah.
I guess it'd be the '70s, yeah. And it'd just be like, 1960 Les Paul Standard, $1,500, and you got this printed out list, and he'd mail it out once a month, and that's where the idea came from.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Gosh, what a tremendous. And then if customers wanted to see that guitar, you're taking Polaroid pictures and
And
dropping in
mailing
the
it
mail
out.
to them. Is that the
Yep.
process?
Yeah, and
Wow.
then it was hilarious. About mid '90s, a friend of mine, I think he gave lessons at the store or something like that. Real computer whiz. He goes, Dave, what if I told you there's a way I could set it up for you so if you got a guitar in 5 minutes later, somebody would see it in Japan and could order it right then and there. And I was like going, that's amazing. What would it take to set that up? He says, I'll do it for you for 5% of every sale that you make on this. And I was always pretty dim, but I was smart enough to know that I better not do that. So we negotiated a price to set this up, and that was my first website. And yeah, and Lord knows did things explode after that. So
Oh my gosh. Thank God you didn't take that deal. I think about my first. So in addition to Ernie Williamson Music, oh gosh, I guess now it's been, it's coming up on, it's been 15 years since I started a separate e-commerce business for high-end bass guitars called FretSpot,
okay, sure.
and started that in 2008. And in the very beginning, of course, even in 2008, wasn't really sure how to set up an e-commerce site. And I think I had posted in a guitar forum that I was looking for someone that knew how to do it and, was willing to hire someone. And I had someone reach out to me, and he said, hey, really all you need is a WordPress site with, some simple plugins. It's really easy to do. He's like, as long as and he's like, it's all free. He's like, as long as you pay for the hosting and set up like the stuff on your end, it's like, I'll do all the other work and get you set up for free. And
Oh,
I'll
nice.
even like answer some questions and like help you get started, like make a couple of listings for you. And I'll never forget his name's Lin Chi. So who I later he was living in California and I live in Missouri, so this wasn't even anyone I knew. And Lynn got everything set up and got everything ready to go for Fret Spot. And I think about a year later, I happened to be in his neck of the woods in California, took him and his wife out to dinner. And I mean, he got Fret Spot started and online for nothing, just out of the kindness of his heart. And
What a
that
nice
thing
guy.
has grown
Yeah.
on to be, pretty successful for the couple of the boutique-based brands I represent. I'm their number one dealer in the world, all
Wow.
off of a little hobby business that some guy helped me set up a free website for. So,
Yeah, well, congratulations. That's great.
but
Yeah.
I'm really glad. I was relieved to hear to say that you turned down the 5% on every
Oh
sale. I
my
was
God.
a little
Yeah.
worried where that story was getting ready to head.
Yeah. Yes, part of me was savvy enough to figure out that I better not do that. I was like, oh, this sounds a little iffy, but again, it was great. And so again, I gave him however much money, and he set it up, and it is miraculous. I mean, we really work hard. I mean, we've got like just in this store, 3 guys shooting photographs of everything that comes in daily, and I mean, every day we list stuff, and there's guys that sit on our website, must be like hawks, and just pick off the good stuff. I mean,
Hmm.
it's amazing to me how much stuff we turn a day, I guess.
Yeah, it is mind blowing. So your main location, I'm assuming you're in La Crosse, like your
Yep.
office and where you're located is in La Crosse. And then remind me how many total locations you have.
We've got another store in Madison, Wisconsin, one in Milwaukee that you visited, and one in Marshfield. So
Gotcha.
4 altogether.
Now, let's talk a little bit of logistics, and this may be interesting to anyone who's listening, but it's definitely interesting to me because I have questions for my own business too. So, do you centralize like your shipping and receiving in terms of what you're receiving from vendors? So, are your vendors shipping directly to like the La Crosse location and then you're distributing to your stores, or how does that mostly work?
A little bit of both. I mean, the La Crosse location has a good-sized warehouse to it, so we can store a lot of stuff here, where some of the other stores are a little tight for space, so they wouldn't really have room for overstock inventory or anything like that. So, but we do, like weekly, I get a sales report from each store, and basically I have a working inventory for each store, and every week, whatever they sell, I just reorder weekly and to be shipped directly. But then there's certain things like if you do a deal with a certain company or whatever, sometimes they just want everything shipped on pallets to one location. And so there are companies that we get pallet loads of stuff just to this location, and then we distribute it. And we have a truck. We have a truck and a driver that goes to Marshfield once on a Thursday, and then the next Thursday they'll go to Madison and Milwaukee. So
Gotcha.
they'll pick up repairs from the other stores that need to come back, drop off the inventory, switch stuff around. There's always somebody in Milwaukee that wants to try a guitar that's in Madison or whatever. So
Sure.
it's every week, he's running around and switching stuff between the stores.
Now you mentioned on your website that now you're 70% or more of your sales are online versus in store. What's
I
your
think it's more than 70%, actually. Yeah.
I was I was trying to qualify it that that's on the site, but that could be, I'm sure that's changed somewhat and will probably continue to change. So what's that process look like for when a guitar enters, is delivered to your warehouse or to the store? Do you have a process where it's photographed and obviously it's received into inventory, but photographed and everything's listed and put up on the website before it hits the floor? Or kind of walk me through how you guys handle that? Because I would
Sure.
imagine if a guitar is in the store, it's 99% of them or 90% of them or whatever are on the website if it's in the store. Is that
Oh,
a safe
yeah.
assumption?
I mean,
Okay.
really inexpensive stuff we don't bother with on the website or whatever. We do try to maintain a store that, locals can come in and like buy their first guitar and whatever. We don't really mess with that much on the website at all, but, we keep a good selection of, beginner guitars, intermediate guitars. But so yeah, as we get a shipment in, say UPS comes in, drops off 20 guitars. On cold days, we let them warm up overnight. But normally we just open up the box. The guys check them off against the invoices. I give them the invoices every day of stuff I'm expecting. They check it in, tag the case. The case goes into the case storage rooms. And then the guitar goes upstairs for photograph, gets put on the website, and then put, if it's staying in our store, it gets photographed here, it gets put out. If it's going to another store, we just put it in the pile for the next truck. So
Gotcha. So you're not maintaining like studios, photography studios, and dedicated staff at every location to get things listed.
well, actually, yeah, we do. Because we don't photograph the stuff that's going to be, if it's going to Madison, they have to do their own photography. Same way in
Gotcha.
Milwaukee, same way in Marshfield. So
Gotcha. Okay. So each location is listing their own,
yep,
basically putting their own stuff up. Are they also writing their own descriptions?
yes, they are.
So the people in each individual store, they're taking their photos and getting everything listed that way. Does every guitar get its own photo, or if you have a black Strat's a black Strat, if it's like a solid color guitar, do you just reuse photos? How are you guys handling that?
We photo everything, and give neck dimensions, weight, all of that on each guitar, even if it's a $500 guitar. A lot of work.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But again, and we still get a lot of guys saying, "Hey, if I buy this guitar, is this the actual one I'm going to get?" Even on like Taylor Babies or whatever, and it is. We try to photograph every guitar that way, and sometimes our photo guys. That poor guy last week, I think he was 100 some guitars behind. We had a big batch of Fender Custom Shop stuff come in, and it takes forever to get all that stuff done and done right, but
Yeah.
we just kind of slogged through it. So
Yeah, it's amazing. So obviously, guitar shop, you've got acoustics and electrics. Is there anything you don't offer when it comes to guitar? Do you do all the folk and bluegrass instruments and everything else too?
We do a little bit of mandolins, a very small amount of banjos, but heavy on the acoustics and the electrics. Mainly guitars.
Gotcha. And then how has the marketplace changed recently in terms of that division of sales? Are you seeing, acoustics selling at a greater pace than electrics, or vice versa? What are you seeing in the marketplace currently?
We've always been a little heavier. I'd say 65 to 70% electric, and then the rest acoustic. And there's times where that changes. There's been like big acoustic booms, but I think consistency-wise, that'd be about right.
It seems like the electric buyer is like more of kind of the collector, right? It seems
More
like the electric
psychotic.
buyer,
Yeah.
they just want all of every different model guitar, they want to have it.
Well, and it's hilarious because, sadly, we'll have a lady come in and say, "Hey, my husband died. He had a guitar collection. Would you be interested in making an offer on it?" We'll say, "Sure." And, it's usually electric guitars, and, you'll have 50 electric guitars. We almost never have the guy come in and say, "Well, hey, I've collected acoustic guitars all my life. I've got 100 of them. Would you be interested in buying?" It's the psycho electric guys, and I'm one of them. I can't get enough guitars, and obsessed with them. But it seems like, and even bass players, not as much. Usually bass players have a bass or two and they're solid amp, and they play and they're good. But guitar players are just, and I'm preaching to the choir, but I'm a nut, and guitar players are nutty. So
the guitar players are like the trumpet players of the electric and string world. The trumpet player, I also play trumpet, so I play trumpet and the bass, and I play a little guitar. But trumpet players are just like electric guitar players.
Are they seriously?
Oh yeah,
I wouldn't
they
have
go.
guessed that.
And but for us, of course, the trumpet itself is pretty much like the guitar, and we have to have a different trumpet for different styles of music and stuff like that. But then the mouthpieces are sort of like guitar pedals, and we will have every trumpet player who's been playing for at least through college or beyond will have at least a box full of mouthpieces. So
Well, that's great. I had no clue.
yeah. So it's very similar. And I think it's in the trumpet world because you're always trying to like solve something or fix a problem. In the guitar world, it's because we're always wanting to sound like something or somebody.
Sure.
And which I guess ultimately the trumpet world's the same way. We're trying to sound like one of our idols, and that's why we're so fidgety with the
that wraps up the guitar business for sure. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, and that's another thing we need more of. We need more guitar heroes or whatever. There's no more, like Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, all these guys are getting a bit up there in years, and Jimi Hendrix has been gone forever, and I don't know who younger people look up to now, you know.
Well, and I think the popularity of guitar being noted, front and center in music, kind of always is on a pendulum. We'll go through. We went through that in the '80s where we had a lot of synth pop and guitar kind of went in the background a little bit, and
Yep.
and then it comes forward. So it kind of is on a pendulum all the time, but is always ever present. And I think to some degree, you're right. Like there's not as many of kind of the guitar hero folks, but I think that's been replaced with kind of the guitar being very accessible to people and everyone wanting to play it, feeling like they can play it, and
Oh
making it
yeah,
maybe
and there's so
more in
much you can
reach.
see online anymore. You know, so many people playing and young people that you've never heard of just smoking. You know.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. You had mentioned that you being also a guitar nut, you're pretty well known for having a sizable collection. You on the website it says you've got 300 guitars. That's likely a number that's always in flux. What does it take for a guitar to make it to your personal collection of like Dave's
Well, then
collection of
I mean, the
guitars?
person. I guess that's been a while since that's been updated because the personal collection it's somewhere between 500 and 600 now. Um, yeah. Some of it is say a guy walked in the door. Say if a guy walked into the door today with a reverse Firebird in a color that I don't have, I'd say okay, automatically up in the upstairs that goes in the collection. Or custom colored Strats or whatever. But we've got like I mean I know there's like 9 or 10 Blackguard Tellys up there right now. I'm a big fan of like Maple Neck Strats from the '50s. I've got quite a bit of all of that stuff. So I mean, if that stuff came in the door, if there's something really special, maybe I'd go upstairs and maybe I'd pull one out from the collection that was a lesser quality or lesser condition. But I mean, I feel pretty comfortable with what we've got right now. Recently, we bought a Rickenbacker collection from a good customer of ours who's been collecting Rickenbackers forever. He was getting up there in years and, his family wasn't interested or whatever. So we bought the collection from him and I said I'd keep it together as a collection in his name. So that added, I think, 60 Rickenbackers to the collection right there, So,
Wow.
so I mean, as things like that happen, we're still always looking, always looking. I think I've got probably 10 or 15 guitars in my office right now that are collection bound once I make the room to put them out there. So
As soon as you said you're pretty happy with the collection at the moment, I was like, oh shoot, you made a mistake. You've tempted the guitar gods. There's going to be more that's going to darken your door and tempt you to add to it. That always seems to. I hear that all the time with bass customers and trumpet customers. Well, they'll tell me like, I'm pretty happy with what I have right now, and I'm like, I'm going to be hearing from you soon.
yeah, yeah, we have customers that I had a guy call me up the other day and said, oh, and this is maybe a month or two back. He goes, Dave, I'm 70 years old now. This is going to be the last guitar I buy from you. And in my mind, I'm like going, yeah, right. And it wasn't 2 weeks later, he called me up to buy another one, so.
Yeah, I've never, every time I've had a customer tell me that, I always hear back from them within less than a year for sure. So,
yeah. So, I mean, I'm comfortable with the guitar collection, but not saying that I'm not always still looking or whatever. And there's always going to be the next guitar for sure. I'm not, I don't draw the line in the sand and say, oh, I'm good. I'm never going to buy another guitar.
Right.
I realize that wouldn't be true.
Yeah, exactly. So as we think about Dave's guitar, especially with the, most of your business now being online, tell me, why do customers choose you? What sets you apart from some of the other online competitors?
And I'm not really sure about that. I mean, like there's so many companies like CME, Sweetwater that do such a great job and have great inventory. I'm not sure why, we do a good business. I mean, not anywhere in the numbers that those guys do, I'm sure.
Sure.
But we do a good business and, we try to be competitive in pricing. We try to be generous with giving, trades, taking in trades where I think Sweetwater just does new stuff. So that's maybe one advantage, but, I mean, we have a really good inventory, a lot of guitars, try to describe them very well, try to be fair in pricing, try to be fair in the trades. And I mean, it's no secret. I mean, we've been doing that for 42 years and it's just kind of built from there, but it's been, we don't really spend a lot of money in advertising. I always say I'm probably the worst businessman there is. I mean, I just love guitars and I just kind of sit here and go like, okay, well, if I buy this guitar for $1,000, I think I can get $1,500 for it, or you know, and that's really what it comes down to. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing that since the start, and internet has changed things. When we did our little mailing list, that changed things, but it's really still all the same business we've been doing since we started, I guess.
Right. So tell me a little bit about your company culture. How would you define your culture? Like when you're hiring people, what traits are you looking for? Tell me a little bit like what it's like to work and shop there.
Well, some of the guys working for me here, I mean, yeah, 42 years in business. I mean, some of the guys have been here over 30 years now. And it basically started out, I mean, guys would hang out in the store so much and be helpful that I felt guilty not paying them.
Right.
So I mean, some of the guys got hired on from that and they've been here since. Um, you know, Now Tyler is the business manager here, so he's more in charge of hiring now. And a good personality is a plus, a guitar player is a plus, computer skills are a plus, all the usual things that way. But I mean, to me, just getting a warm, fuzzy feeling about a guy, his personality is the most important thing. Being able to get along with the staff. I mean, the more people you have that you have to work with, the more challenging it is.
Do your in-store staff, the folks kind of working the floor, do they handle the online customers and all of those sales transactions, or is that a separate team?
Yeah, a little of both. I mean, La Crosse isn't a big town. It's maybe 50,000 people, but we have a lot of people drive from quite a distance to come visit the store, visit the collection, whatever. And but in general, I mean, there's probably 4 guys that work the main sales floor, then 2 guys work the acoustic room, and they handle the phone calls and they handle the online orders too, and the walk-ins.
Gotcha. So tell me a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like. Like what do you do when you come in? Tell me the things you're responsible for.
Well, the store opens up at 10 o'clock, closes at 6. I always try to get here about 8:30. Come in and clean up all the email, answer all the email that came in overnight, look at the orders that came in, put out any fires that are starting early in the game, and just get the store prepped, ready to open up. Then once we get opened up, then the phones start ringing and everything's happening. I get more work done between 8 and 10 in the morning than I do the rest of the day, really.
Sure. Those emails that you're checking, are you getting is that like the general customer email, or is it just like your personal emails coming to you?
Info at Dave's Guitar comes to me, but there's a few different guys that answer that. But I mean, I see every one of them, so I mean, I want to see them, and I usually just distribute them. If somebody's asking an acoustic question, I'll forward it on to our acoustic guy. If they're asking about Gretches or Rickenbackers, I forward it on to Lon. He's our resident expert that way. So I mean, but I scroll through everything and I try to answer anything I can. But if somebody can answer it better, it gets forwarded on. And then my personal email is usually deluged with like companies trying to sell me gear. So
Right. Right. So thinking over like the last year or so, it seems like a lot of businesses, a lot of retail especially, have noticed a continued shift post-pandemic. So I think during the pandemic, a lot of us saw a big boost in sales, online sales or whatever, and then many of us started to see that kind of subside a little bit from the people being cooped at home looking for something to do. But now it seems like it's shifted, still shifting, where more and more customers have decided that the ease of buying online kind of trumps the idea of having to get up and drive across town to go to a store. So have you seen that trend and effect on your end as well? Are you seeing store traffic down, even though web sales may be up?
yeah, oh yeah, definitely. And again, I'm as guilty of that as anybody. Instead of like going out shopping for something, oh, I can get on Amazon and have it here in a day or two or whatever. So we're all spoiled that way, and musicians for sure also. One thing we saw with the pandemic, I mean, if you had it in stock, it sold. Didn't matter what, whatever price it was at, if you had it, it sold. I mean, people were just hungry for that kind of stuff. Now, since that, And then, again, all the industries, Gibson, Fender, nobody was shipping anything, Paul Reed Smith. So we were out of inventory. We had a lot of money, but we had no inventory to sell. And now everything has gone the exact opposite. Now we have absolutely no money, but we've got inventory, up to the ceilings. And everybody is real caught up, and all the companies have too much inventory, all the stores have too much inventory. So now it's a little more competitive. If you have a guitar, it's not like, oh, I've got this guitar, just come and buy it. They're like, oh no, we want this price, we want this much off, we want that, and they can shop around and get it now because everybody's a little over inventoried.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, and I think that's going to be the wave of the future. I mean, I think we're going to see less and less traffic in stores, and it's going to be more and more online, which tends to, like what we were first talking about, like the need for satellite stores or whatever. It's interesting. My manager always tells me, he said, Dave, if we had one store, put all our money into that operation, just big warehouse, you'd make more money than you would by having 4 stores. I still love the brick and mortar. I'm a brick and mortar guy, died hard. I want to go in and, play the guitar. I want to try the guitar. I want to meet somebody. I want to have a conversation. I want it to be a person-to-person transaction if I was doing it. And plus the people that come to the store, I mean, they I think they need that. They want that connection. If they make the effort to drive here, we try to be extra, special, extra, give them extra care, and make it a satisfying journey for them. But it's going to be less and less. I mean, admittedly, having multiple stores. I mean, the way Sweetwater's doing it, that's pretty smart. I mean, they've got a great operation, and they're doing wonderful with it. Not saying that I would want to be a Sweetwater. I mean, I love the used guitars. I love having. I don't like I won't let my guys cold call people. I just won't do that. I mean, to me, I've never been a fan of that. I've never liked salesmen over my shoulder calling me up and like saying, well, how'd you like this product? Hey, did you know we just got this in or whatever?
Right.
We just don't do that. But I mean, again, they're doing great with it. It's super smart operation. Different strokes for different folks.
I worry that people won't appreciate what they have in local stores until they're gone.
Until they're gone, yeah.
If you get on any of the music forum subreddits, for example, or forums, and you'll people that don't have a good local shop anymore will get on and they'll kind of wax poetic about what a loss it is and how they wish they had something. And but
then they were buying all the strings on Amazon or Sweetwater or
exactly
guitars. Yeah, exactly. You can't have it both ways, and yeah, exactly. So they probably miss a great repair guy that set up their guitars. They can't buy a set of strings in an emergency situation, But I mean, unfortunately, if these stores aren't supported, they will go away.
Yeah, they will. We're dealing with that right now. With a big part of our business is also school service, and that's a message I'm trying to talk to our educators about. Is just see the value and what we provide as your school music dealer. And there's options where they could bring in, I won't name any names, but there's options where they could bring in national, especially kind of sort of mail order only options for rental service for band instruments. But in the school side, in addition to, of course, renting their instrument, we have all the repair techs, not only for the rental instruments, but we repair all of the school's instruments as well. We also send out an ed rep that comes to visit the teacher every week to bring them whatever supplies they need, pick up their repairs, drop off repairs, any of those kind of things that they need. In our case, we also are a major sponsor for any of their conferences and meetings that they have. We contribute a ton of money towards that, to the point where those conferences wouldn't exist without our support. And so I'm trying to get them all to realize now, these things
how much
you enjoy
value
now,
you bring to them.
would not exist if not for our store and stores like us. Because I worry that I saw one director earlier this year mentioning how in a program that we service that she was going to offer some of these online rentals from a national competitor to some of her students as an option. And I pulled her aside. I was like, "Hey, please don't. You know,
Yeah.
we're bending over backwards to help you in all these ways and to serve you. And by just
Yeah.
sending
Don't
that
slap
money
us in the
out,
face. Yeah.
yeah, it just doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help your students. Doesn't help anyone. So you definitely got to kind of preach that message for sure." But we had mentioned before we started recording about how we both have multiple locations, and you touched a little bit about how some of your folks have told you, hey, you could make more money without multiple locations. And I thought that might be kind of fun to dive into that a little bit. A lot of times when I work with and talk with other stores, especially if they only have one location, especially if they are maybe a little bit newer to the industry, and I'd say newer, I'd say newer being maybe under 10 years of experience in
Sure.
the
Sure.
industry. They often will think that the next progression is, to have multiple storefronts. But I think in today's world, I don't know that that's quite what it's cracked up to be. There's quite a few challenges there. You had mentioned a love for just brick and mortar retail in general, which I agree with. I feel the same way. You also even kind of started this recording of sharing how even though most of your business is online and we're selling higher end stuff, you still want to be the place for your local people where they can come and get their first guitar or get that intermediate guitar. And that's a feeling, seeing someone get that first instrument and the smile on a kid's face or whatever is a great feeling. But I don't know in today's world that it would make sense if someone just had just a straight up guitar shop to open multiple locations. I think probably the strategy is, a single showroom type location and servicing out of that and shipping out of that. In my case, because we do so much school service, it's not really an option. I need kind of a base of operations for each region that we're in to service for that local rental customer and service customer. Or at least I think I need that. I say that, but then there are places like you mentioned, Sweetwater, that they don't have any of that, and they're in that business as well. So maybe those times are changing too. But yeah, I think to have multiple locations in today's climate definitely adds to the complexity without necessarily adding to the bottom line in a positive way. Would you agree
There
with
you go.
that?
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love, at each store, we've got a great repair staff. I like to have like a great inventory at every store. I mean, if somebody comes into our Madison store, I want to have a Martin D45 in stock. I want to have 59 reissue Les Pauls. I mean, I want to have all the good stuff where people can come in and play it and everything like that. And if they buy a guitar there, it gets set up, it gets, restrung. They can do any repairs that get done. To me, it's more of a customer service thing than a money-making thing. Although every store I've got, La Crosse included, if you just take their walk-in business, they make it. Okay, you just subtract the online business completely. Any one of our stores could make it on its own financially. Would there be a lot of money left over? I don't think so. I mean, it'd be like any business that just tries to be a brick and mortar business and just works locally. You can make a living, but it'd be a bare living. You'd make your living. I'd put food on the table, but it wouldn't be much more than that. And every one of my stores kind of does that, so they're paying for themselves. The employees are getting paid. Great guys at all the stores are all friends. So I love that portion of the business. But, again, I've been told multiple times that there'd be more money in my pocket at the end of the month if we just had the one singular operation concentrated on the mail order, even put more money into like online advertising, all of this stuff like that, But I never said I was smart about business anyway. So,
So over the 42 years that Dave's Guitar Shop's been an actual, established business, you've definitely seen lots of changes in the marketplace and challenges, trials, and tribulations. Can you tell me about a particular challenge that stands in your mind that was really difficult that you guys were able to overcome?
You mean just this week, or you mean over 42 years?
Whatever stands out. It could be this week. It could be back in '97. It doesn't matter when.
Oh, the bad ones, I think I tend to erase out of my memory. But I mean, there's been so many, peaks and valleys. And, you work through it. I mean, I'm not I wouldn't go to Las Vegas and gamble, but I mean, I gamble here every day. You know, I'll make a risky move on buying a lot of inventory. And, you know, again, you have hopes that you can sell it in a timely manner, pay the bills in a timely manner. Does it work all the time? Absolutely not. You know, I'll buy a collection and get some of the stuff, and it turns out, you know, you look at it a little closer. Oh, this had a repaired headstock crack. Oh, this had a change pickup. You know, so you know you're lucky if you break even on. There's so much stuff like that's happened over the years, and you know you just roll with it. There's been financial dire straits, you know, throughout the 42 years. I mean, I remember early on a good friend of mine here that played bass in a band with me, and he had a good steady job, worked at a brewery. There's a big brewery here, and he always had money and stuff like that. And every month at the end of the month, I'd call him up. Hey, Mark, I can't make rent. Can you come buy an amp from me, or can you buy it? You know, I'll give you a good deal on a guitar so I can pay my rent. I mean, and that goes back to 82.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, now it's more like, hey, I owe Gibson $500,000, guys. What are we going to do? What can we do? What can we sell this week or whatever? So, I mean, you know, it's the same game that I played for the last 42 years. Just the dollar amounts have changed, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've always found a way to adapt and survive and thrive, you know, in spite of changing
I guess. I mean,
marketplaces and challenges.
There's been a lot of luck involved, but I mean, you know, just nose to the grindstone and just like setting a course and sticking with it, I guess, you know.
I think it's fair to say, you know, if you've been successful, you've certainly had a few lucky breaks here and there, but if you've got a streak of successes and longevity, and certainly if you've made it this far, there's a lot of intellect and perseverance that goes with that as well. So
yeah, perseverance is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Like I've got a choice, you know.
I think the last question I've got is, if you could send a message to a younger version of you, what would you say?
Oh my God, take life seriously, way younger. My God, did I ever, you know, 18 years old, you know, I wanted to be a guitar player, wanted to play in a rock band, wanted to be a rock star, drank too much, did too many drugs, didn't take life seriously at all. I mean, it was one big party for me. And I think oftentimes, instead of starting this business when I was 25, and again, even at 25 into my 30s, you know, it's still, you know, too much fun. But if I would have taken life seriously, you know, right out of high school, I knew guitars. I mean, I just ate, breathed, and sleep guitars. And I didn't realize I could maybe make a business out of it or anything like that. But I wish I would have just, you know, calmed down a little bit, got a little more serious about life right out of high school and just started right then and there. And again, what I'm really about is the vintage guitar market. And back then, there was great finds and, you know, you could find things in pawn shops, newspaper, you know, where now it's just like people come in here with a melody maker and they think it's a $50,000 guitar, you know.
Right.
So.
Yeah, you could have really struck gold if you could have gone back in time to start collecting all that stuff that at the time was just a used guitar.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's interesting that you know, as successful as you've been, that your answer is to take life more seriously. But it sounded like you had a hell of a lot of fun and you've been successful. So
there you go. I guess I did it all.
You got to be happy with that outcome, right? You got to be happy with that outcome
too. Yeah.